Thank you, Chairman. Climate change is real. It's human caused, and it's leading to intensifying weather, rising seas, and more extreme heat days in Florida and in many other areas of the country. What's our Republican colleagues' plan to combat climate change? To do nothing. What's the Supreme Court's plan to combat climate change? To do nothing. Today's Clean Air Act ruling is another roadblock in President Biden's ability to combat carbon emissions. The Supreme Court has made it clear guns deserve more constitutional protections than women or the planet. We in this committee must fight back, and we will fight back. We have no other choice in order for us to help save the future of our nation and our world. At least today, we see some modest bipartisan recycling reforms for the hearing, like the Recycling and Composting Accountability Act that empowers EPA to assess recycling, improve efficiency, and develop best practices for states, local governments, and tribes. Members, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, we can do this. Let's continue to work together on that. And then the Recycling Infrastructure and Accessibility Act. It directs EPA to create a pilot program to award grants between $500,000 to $15 million to states, local governments, Indian tribes, and public-private partnerships. 70% is set aside for underserved communities. Also bipartisan. Last year, my hometown of Kissimmee, Florida, had to eliminate glass recycling, quote, due to the high costs associated with processing. These grants will be a game changer for communities like ours. Mr. Alloway, small towns across America often have cost barriers to reach full recycling. Would the $500,000 to $15 million grants under the proposed Recycling Infrastructure and Accessibility Act help overcome these barriers? And if so, how?
Representative, thank you. Certainly, any improvement to infrastructure will help to improve the economics of the recycling system. But I would caution members of the committee from expecting that infrastructure improvements alone will solve the problem. The majority of the costs of the recycling system are associated with operating costs, not capital or infrastructure. So long as transportation is required and transportation is expensive, it's going to be a challenge, and markets are distant. It will be a challenge, an economic challenge to move materials to market.
So this helps out, but there's more we have to do to invest in the infrastructure, which also is dealt with in the Recycling and Composting Accountability Act. Is that moving us in the right direction with EPA and some of these infrastructure needs and our assessments we need to make?
Representative, generally speaking, yes, improvements and investments in infrastructure are helpful. As my written testimony details, I would also propose improvements in infrastructure by themselves at their current scope are inadequate to make a meaningful and sustained improvement in the nation's recycling system. Thank you.
Absolutely. I agree. We invested over $240 million in the recent new infrastructure law, but there's more that we have to do. Ms. Arellano, currently out in the Pacific, there is a floating garbage island that is more than double the size of your home state of Texas. It's nearly 3 million metric tons and filled to the brim with plastics and other waste. I want to give my constituents at home an idea. What's the cost of inaction if we do not reform our recycling system, plastics, and recycling both to the world and to local communities like yours?
Aside from the irreversible health damage and costs on our communities that community members and low resource communities of color and poor communities alike can't afford, part of it is also our municipal waste systems that are consumed by microfibers. And in fact, a piece of the Break Free study includes a microfiber study to get at the heart of how much damage this is causing local municipalities and districts. So what we're saying here is, how about let's look at synthetic fibers, right? Where states in the South, like Mississippi, have an overwhelming economy based on cotton, over 553 million in the South. Instead, we're relying on foreign companies to supply us with cheap fabric and goods. So the multi-generational costs are everything from jobs to our health. We see an ever increasing automation inside of ExxonMobil, implementing robots by Boston Robotics that include $75,000 for a base model, $30,000 for a camera, $25,000 for maintenance. That's $130,000 to replace an entire person and potentially 2 positions. So to claim that this is a jobs issue is false, as we see, just like in any other industry, a move and push towards automation.
Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas. Representative Crenshaw, you're now